Welcome back, Saddos, to the next episode of the Sitcom Archive Deep Dive Overdrive. My name is Alison Barton Simmons.
Now then, I'm Eggs Benedict.
Are you eating chickens?
Am I what?
Eating chickens. Are you still eating chickens? It's been running through my head this past week, that since our last episode. And it was just something very minor, but it really did tickle me.
Yeah, she got a great turn of phrase, hasn't she, Mrs. Lewinsky? Yeah.
Brilliant.
No, I'm not eating chickens, but I did go to somebody's birthday party the other day. There was the guy whose birthday party it was in a pub. His dad was there, but his partner wasn't there. And I knew that the partner had multiple sclerosis.
Right.
Because she couldn't make it from the South Island. And I was like, oh, that's a shame. Is she in a wheelchair? And the guy went, well, not all the time. Sometimes we just tip her out in the garden.
God.
Now, I couldn't work out if he was being, like, facetious.
Yes.
Humorous, or like,
yes,
you're asking me a stupid question, but I thought it was quite funny. Because you know what I mean? Some MS sufferers, they're like up and down. Sometimes they...
Of course, yeah. It's not like a linear thing, is it? It can be really bad, and then other times you can sort of function and life's all right. Yeah. I hope they don't tip her out in the garden though. That's
No, I'd assume not. But no chickens.
No chickens this week. Okay, that's fine. No. That's fine. So we are on season 3 of the Sitcom Archive Deep Dive Overdrive, and we're looking this series at Dear John. We're still on series 1, episode 5, which is entitled Toby, which is when we get to meet John's son, his only son, by his ex-wife Wendy, and we find out a little bit more about the previous relationship he had with his ex-wife, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, and she, for my money, is totally obnoxious, this character. I do not like her.
I had to watch this episode over 2 sittings because I couldn't quite cope with Wendy. I had to turn it off when he went to pick up Toby because of her obnoxiousness at the front door.
Yeah, she's horrible. She's up there with my Tom Good and your Sybil Fawlty.
I think she's even higher than that. I have to sort of think about, like, why do I not like this person? I've got to check my own sort of internal misogyny. Because I think, why am I not liking this woman? You know, why, what is it about this woman that I don't like? Is it just that I'm judging her? I don't know. No, she's just a fucking horrible person. She's a horrible, horrible character. And you're not supposed to like her, I don't think, are you?
No, I don't think so. So this episode attracted 13.19 million viewers, which is very similar to last week's. Can't remember exactly what last week's was. And it came out on March 17th, 1986.
Yes.
And as always, you will enjoy it.
You will enjoy it.
So no quiz this week, I'm afraid, but one thing I did want to just have a quick discussion about was a poll that I ran on our social media this week. Right. I know that you don't keep a close eye on the social media stuff, but you are in the Facebook group, and I think you did see it, didn't you, about nemesis in British sitcoms?
I did, yes, I did.
So I was basically sort of asking the question why we don't have many nemesis characters in British sitcoms, because they're very common in American sitcoms, I think.
Yeah.
Newman in Seinfeld, Arrested Development's got Lucille too.
Yeah.
Just trying to think of a few off the top of my head. Toby in The Office is...
Toby Flenderson. I think that's one that I even suggested, because it's like an unnatural hatred of Toby that Michael has. And nobody else seems to dislike Toby. So it really is. He is like a nemesis for Michael.
Yeah, but my definition of a nemesis, really, which I think is... I mean, albeit this is just my definition, but I think this is a good definition, is that the nemesis needs to hate and be hated, usually by the main character or one of the main ensemble. Okay. So I guess that Toby is really ambivalent to Michael, and also if you look at a lot of British sitcoms where you might see you might at first glance think there was a nemesis, like Mr. Mackay to Fletcher in Porridge, or even Slater in Only Fools and Horses to Dell. Yes. And Albert and Harold in Steptoe and Son. They, to me, none of those count as sort of bona fide nemesis, because there's more at play than just pure hatred. You know, there might be the authority issue, like in Porridge, or grudging respect, or a weird kind of twisted family love dynamic like you get with the Steptoes.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So in America, when you've got the janitor in Scrubs, that doesn't work because JD doesn't hate the janitor.
I was just thinking about Scrubs, and I was thinking about the twist. In the first episode, you're drawn in to think that Dr. Kelsaw's the lovely, warm, cuddly one, and that Dr. Cox is like an evil doctor that's going to make everybody's life a misery. And that, to me, was like a real switch of who was the actual nemesis. Dr. Kelsaw is a horrible character. He's mean and horrid and nasty, and just hates interns. He hates anybody that's sort of not at his level in the hospital. Whereas Dr. Cox is, you feel like he's nasty, but he's not. He's actually a nice person, and he wants the best for the staff. He wants everybody to be.
He's a flawed hero or anti-hero.
He is a flawed hero. Yeah.
Yeah, but neither of them again would, to my mind, qualify as a nemesis, because even Dr. Kelso being a bad guy, he hates everyone, but JD doesn't really hate him, you know?
Okay. Really,
I suppose the janitor is the only one with real hatred in that show because he hates JD irrationally.
He does. Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? It has to be a sort of reciprocal.
So is it irrational? Is that what? Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. It has to be. For my definition anyway, which is only, everyone can choose to ignore it, but there has to be a reciprocal hatred for there to be a genuine nemesis in sitcoms, and you get that. You actually do get that a lot in American sitcoms, not so much in British ones. But I came up with 4 for a poll.
Go on.
Which were, it was sort of apropos of nothing. I just thought of these 4, which were the only real 4 I could think of. Consisted of Father Dick Byrne in Father Ted.
Right.
Ted hates Dick. Mary loves Dick.
Mary loves Dick.
Yeah, what was that show?
I shout that quite regularly, and when people don't know what it means, it just makes me look like...
Yeah, that's why I thought we'd best qualify what we mean by randomly shouting out Mary loves Dick. It was from Most Haunted, was it, or something?
Yeah, the Yvette Fielding show.
Yeah, look it up on YouTube. It's a great clip. So, yes, Father Ted hates Father Dick Byrne, and it's more than reciprocated. Then in Toast of London, a more sort of contemporary sitcom, Toast hates Ray Purchase hates Toast. Phoenix Nights, good 20 years ago, Brian Potter hates Den Perry, the fat pig.
Yes, he does. Yeah.
and Denzel hates Brian Potter. And then going way back, of course, in Dad's Army, the relationship between Warden Hodges and Captain Mannering is also one of mutual contempt and disdain, isn't it?
Yes.
So I ran the poll. You've seen the poll, but can you remember, because I did it on Twitter and on our Facebook group, can you remember who won?
No, I can't. Go on, tell me.
I shall tell you, because it was the same result on both social networks.
Oh, okay.
Father Dick Byrne was the top one.
Right.
Followed by Warden Hodges. Followed by Den Perry, the fat pig.
Yeah.
Followed by Ray Bloody Purchase. So there you go. That was the Nemesis poll. However, we did have people replying, suggesting a few others. I'd like to run them by you, Al.
Oh, go on.
Okay. Some of them you may not know, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But a good suggestion, I thought, was in the first couple of series of Red Dwarf, Rimmer was very much a nemesis to Lister and vice versa. They were the two main characters, but they loathed each other, didn't they? They just needed each other.
They did, and that changed. Yeah. That's a good shout.
I think in the same way that the Steptoes needed each other, but without the love. The love came later.
Yes, yeah.
Somebody nominated Mrs. Dooms Patterson, but we've no idea what Mrs. Dooms Patterson's feelings towards Margot were.
No. But I get it, yeah. I understand that.
Yeah. I thought that was a decent shout, but only one way. And then with staying back to Father Ted, we've got Bishop Brennan. I think he hated Ted, and Ted hated Bishop Brennan. Who
was that? I don't remember him.
He was the one who got kicked up the arse by Father Ted. Do you know what he'd love? A good haired kick up the arse. Patsy and Safi in Absolutely Fabulous.
Okay.
What do you think? Is it more one way?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was hatred. I think it was more... I don't know. That's an odd one, that. It's an odd dynamic.
I think you're right.
Because I think Safi was just at the end of a tether with a mum and Patsy. And Patsy was just thought that Safi was a bit of a spoilsport, perhaps.
Yeah, I don't think it qualifies as a nemesis.
I don't think it was hatred.
It's just tension, contempt.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think it was definitely contempt on Safi's part. Possibly hatred from Patsy's part, I don't know. We've got Blakey on the buses, but I think that was just an authority thing.
Yeah.
Paul in Ever Decreasing Circles. I don't think Paul hated Martin.
No.
There was a good shout, though, for Greg Linley-Jones in Extras. Do you remember that character?
Yes, I do. Yes. It's always really uncomfortable watching them two interact because all of Ricky Gervais's stuff is quite cringy anyway, isn't it? But that was a particularly cringy scene.
Yeah.
When I went, oh.
I have trouble with any scene with that character, and I think he's a bit weak sauce, that character, really.
Yeah.
But yes, nevertheless, they do qualify as nemesis to each other, I would say. And the last one I thought was a really good shout was one I can't believe I missed, actually, was Jeff in Peep Show.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
Yep. Played by Neil Fitzmaurice. Mark hates Jeff, Jeff hates Mark. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
But I wonder why it is that we don't see as many in British sitcoms as we do in America. Does it say something about us culturally, or...?
I wonder if it's seen as being like an easy plot device. A bit too easy. Do we overcomplicate things now in Britain?
Yeah, but even historically, like in these retro comedies that we look at, I don't think there's pure nemesis at play a lot of the time. But anyway, I mean, we've spent enough time talking about nemesises now. Again, it's such a hard word to say. Nemesi.
It is.
Nemesi is the plural of nemesis.
Yeah. So would you think that John and Wendy now are they nemesis?
No, because John throughout the show wants to get back with Wendy. I think. I mean, we see it in this one. It doesn't take much for him to make a pass at her.
It doesn't take much, does it? Bloody extra glass of wine, and he's all over her with his Aaron cardigan on.
It's more just an unhealthy sexual attraction that he's got. One of those relationships that doesn't work, but the genitals are like Velcro.
Okay.
There's an image you won't get rid of very quickly.
Yeah.
Anyway,
need some cream for that.
If you can think of any others above and beyond the ones I read out there or thought of or that Al suggested, then drop us a line. We'll give the contact information at the end of the show.
Should we make a start with this week's episode?
Yes, why don't we do that?
So we're on Series 1, Series 1, Episode 5, Toby.
Dear John, by the time you read these lines, I'll be gone. Life goes on, right or wrong. Now it's all been said and done, dear John. Seems we've sung love's last song, dear John.
So this episode opens at the 1-to-1 club, which we're quite familiar with now, aren't we? We know who's there. We recognise the place. It's somewhere that we've been before. And Kate is in the middle of talking about her first 2 failed marriages, and he's starting to sort of feel that she might have bored these guys, and that was the problem. She was too boring. Which I think is a bit of a shame that's what the conclusion that she's come to. But Ralph asks her about her 3rd marriage, and she snaps. Again, we've seen this quite often, haven't we? That Kate is someone that snaps when anyone sort of reflects back at her something that she's already talking about, and she snaps and says, "Well, yeah, it was terrific, cloud 9," which it's quite weird that she can't seem to control her temper when she's talking about her own experience, which is odd, despite the fact that she's gone to the 1-to-1 club to do this.
So, sort of like group therapy, isn't it, really? Almost. An early type of group therapy, perhaps.
To talk about issues, but she seems to get cross every time someone asks her anything about why she's there.
She's quick to anger, but as in this case, and as in when she snapped at John, I think in the last episode, she does immediately apologise.
Yeah.
I think she probably really gets off on that sort of sparring with Kirk and she's in the mode for it, in the frame of mind for it. And then when one of the others pipes up, they get shot down as well.
They do. John tries to smooth things over in a very John way. That's what he does. He's a bit of a go-between, isn't he? He likes to make things all right again. And he interjects and tries to sort it out. But Louise jumps in with the inevitable question of, did any of the husbands have sexual problems? And she would love the fact that some of these men had sexual problems because she really wants to dig in deep.
Yeah.
Kate suggests that they didn't until they met her, which is quite sad. And Louise does suggest that it might have been their fault, though, as some men are such brutes.
And then she does that face,
with a glint in her eye, the cheeky thing.
Men can be such brutes.
So yeah, she's definitely in. She's waiting for the moment where Kate divulges something about any kind of sexual problem. She really wants to get into the nitty-gritty of this.
It's quite brave, though, to open this episode with all this sort of outpouring. It goes straight into the sort of vulnerable. Kate's been vulnerable, opening it up and pouring her heart out. Yeah, as a way of doing an open to the show. Thought it was quite unique.
Mrs. Arnott then puts her hand up and tells the group that she's got a machine for that kind of thing. So straight away you're thinking, oh my God, what is she going to pull out of her handbag? She tells the group that it's okay, it runs on batteries, which just makes it even worse. And Louise is like desperately, what? Trying to find out what's going on. And she pulls out what looks like a little mobile phone out of a bag. And it's actually an attack alarm, which released a core memory for me.
This isn't going to be really dark, is it?
No, it's not. No, well, I was about 12 or 13 and my dad bought me one of these attack alarms from the back of the Sunday Mirror magazine. And it had a sticker of the Flintstones on it. It was like a rape alarm. And it had a Flintstones sticker, which is a strange juxtaposition of worlds colliding. It's like a children's cartoon image on a rape alarm.
Yeah.
Very, very sort of strange. But yeah, so straight away...
That's even weirder than the those toothbrushes we discussed in Series 1 from The Good Life, isn't it?
I've tried to Google it to see if I could find a picture of said attack alarm, and I couldn't do, but I will do my best and try and find it. It was, because I remember choosing it, going, I'll have that one.
Yeah.
So I must have been quite young in order to choose a Flintstones one.
When it went off, did it go, yabba dabba don't?
No, it didn't. It went, Wilma! It didn't do any of that. It was awful. It was a real... It did the job. It really did the job.
Yeah.
Not that I ever luckily had to put it to any use, but it was, it was something that I bought, and it didn't strike me as being odd when I had it, that it had a children's cartoon sticker on it, but it did, which is quite odd. Anyway, Mrs. Arnott's didn't have a Flintstone sticker on it. Louise assumes that the alarm is somebody else's and not Mrs. Arnott's, and Mrs. Arnott says, well, it's a mini attack alarm. And Kirk says, no one's going to attack your mini, it's the Jags that they go for first, which I thought was quite funny. Mrs. Arnott shows Kirk what it does, and naive Ralph, he still doesn't get it. He really doesn't understand what this...
Yeah, what does it do, he says.
Yeah. What does it do? And I think that's lovely and says a lot about Ralph's character, that he can't put two and two together and think, why would someone need an alarm?
True.
For such a reason, because it's obviously not even on his radar that would be something that someone would do, which is I think that's quite sweet.
That's triggered a memory for me, because while you say it's quite sweet, he's quite dumb as well, isn't
he? Yeah, perhaps.
Do you know what I mean?
I think I like to look at it that he's just he wouldn't ever imagine someone needing to use something like that, because it's not something he would ever involve himself in.
It reminds me of when I was a kid, and my sister had 3 friends round.
Okay.
I don't know if it was a birthday or something, but they were all sort of playing upstairs. They were less than 10,
right?
Maybe 7 or 8 or something. And I was downstairs with my mum, and one of the girls' mother turned up, who was an Indian lady, and came in to collect her daughter. And my mum said, "Will you go upstairs and get Suman to me?" So bear in mind, an Indian lady's turned up, and I knew her as Suman's mum. And Suman is an Indian name, and I've gone, which one's that?
Right.
And my mum said she was really, really proud of me for not seeing colour. And while I get that, part of me also thinks, fucking thick, wasn't I?
You stupid boy.
Work it out. Stupid boy, Pike.
I even thought, though, around this point, the fact that Kirk made the joke around the car, I thought was quite interesting. You can almost imagine the character that he portrays sort of making a really uncouth joke that, women are always needing them around him. You know, like sort of playing on the fact that he's sort of supposed to be sexually
Glad he didn't say that.
adventurous. But he didn't do, and I thought that was quite interesting and made me think more about what's to come for Kirk in sort of future episodes.
Do you have a family, Louise?
No, they couldn't. My husband had a vein.
Kate continues and tells the group that she didn't have children, but longed for them, which is quite a sort of sad scene, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Louise adds that she had 2 wanted children, but did she say that her husband had a vein?
Yeah, so I'm presuming that must mean that he had some sort of artery blockage.
Some blockage, some issue, right, okay.
Not artery.
But
What do I mean?
they'd wanted to... I know what you mean. They'd wanted to adopt a Vietnamese baby, as that was all the rage at the time, but the paperwork was such a bore.
Yeah.
But they got a fox terrier instead. And I'm glad they got a fox terrier and didn't get a baby, because I don't think her heart was in it. If she couldn't fill the paperwork in, I don't think her heart's in it, really.
It made me wonder whether Margot and Jerry ever had the same conversation, because they're from the same class.
Yeah.
They could have adopted from overseas, couldn't they? Do you think a Vietnamese Ledbetter would have fared well on the Avenue?
Oh, wow.
Poor kid.
That's something I would love to have seen. Yeah. Although, when they had the Japanese visitors, she'd got them pillows, them rock hard pillows, and so she was culturally aware, perhaps.
Yeah, true. But it would have been a hard gig for a kid growing up in a Ledbetter house.
I think so, yeah.
Bloody hell, Ralphie, what a dreadful kitchen.
Ralph adds that he too had wanted children, a son. He wanted to name him Bing. To which Louise points out that his surname's Dring, so the child would have been called Bing Dring.
Bing Dring?
And John says, that's not a boy's name, it's a Chinese meal. Bing Dring.
Yeah, but there's this sort of interchange between them where she says Bing Dring and Ralph confirms Bing Dring, and then she says Bing Dring again, and Kirk says, answer that for me, will you, Mrs. Arnott? Very strong.
Louise asks if Kate would marry again after 3 failed marriages. Is it something that's even on her mind? And her answer is maybe. Unexpectedly. I wasn't expecting that. I thought she'd be really off it. But Ralph then suggests, why not join a computer dating agency? But Kate thinks that's really creepy. That's not the way that she wants to go.
Different time thing again, isn't it? The very judgmental 80s, like in the first episode.
Yeah.
But Kirk's suggestion of putting a personal ad in the paper saying frigid chick seeks Eskimo with separate beds, that doesn't go down well, does it? Unsurprisingly.
No, it doesn't. Yeah. And then a new sort of bit part character turns up, the hall's caretaker. He comes bustling in and asks Louise to move a car. He calls her Miss Williams, which really ticks her off because she's a Ms. And I think this is probably one of the first times that I was ever aware of Ms being a thing.
I was going to say this to you because I think Ms became more in vogue around this time, around the mid-80s.
I think, yeah, I agree. The mid-80s was obviously there was Mrs. prior to this, but this is the first time I ever became aware of that was a possibility. You didn't have to be a Miss or a Mrs. You could be a Ms.
Ms.
I didn't know many people though that were Mrs.
No, but I had a teacher who was a Ms, and it caused quite.
Did you? I think yeah.
Caused quite the stir. Oh, she's a Ms.
I bet. Yeah. No, it's not really sort of an issue anymore, is it? But then it was quite a big deal. She tells the caretaker to get out, and she apologises to the group. She's got every intention of going moving a car at some point, but she's absolutely not going to rush out and leave the group. Before they finish, though, she does remind the group that they all have been invited to Mrs. Boyd Peters' house on Sunday. And now Mrs. Boyd Peters she's not someone that we've met before, but she's a Wednesday night person from the Wednesday night group. Women are to bring the food and the men are to bring the wine.
Okay.
So they're all going to head along to this do at Mrs. Boyd Peters. John explains that he might be late though because he's taking his son out for the day. This is the first time we've ever been sort of like ready to meet John's son on screen.
Yeah.
Kirk, who's childless, suggests that John should just cancel his son. He doesn't get it really. Why would you miss the do for the sake of your son? But John doesn't want to because Sunday's the only day that he gets to see him.
Poor John.
Poor John. Louise hints that Mrs. Boyd Peters has an embarrassing problem, but doesn't go into any detail. At this point, I was thinking, I really want to know what this is. I want to know what this embarrassing problem is. And the group are also dying to know what the issue is. But Louise doesn't divulge anything at this stage.
Well, she's interrupted by that caretaker.
Yeah, he comes in again. Yeah, caretaker. The caretaker comes in again to hurry Louise along, and she calls him an odious little pleb. And I thought that was right out of the Margot playbook. You odious little pleb.
Yeah, like the workman who came and did the windbreak could have been on the receiving end of an insult like that, couldn't he?
Absolutely. Pleb. I don't think I'd heard pleb before around this time. I think pleb was something that perhaps I was introduced to by Louise as well.
Yes. I like pleb. I think we should try and bring pleb back. It only seems to get used now when talking about sort of the Tory ruling classes and what they think of everyone else. But
the general public, I agree.
I don't think I used it that way. Maybe I was using it wrong. I think pleb would just be an insult like idiot when I was a kid.
Yeah, you pleb.
Yeah.
John goes to get his son, Toby, on the Sunday from his ex-wife, Wendy's house, which is also the house that he's still paying for. As we've pointed out previously, this boy who plays Toby is actually Ralph Bates' real-life son, Will.
Successful musician.
I wonder how it felt, sort of playing opposite your dad in real life. I bet it was. I wonder if it made it any easier or made it more difficult.
I would have thought. Well, it depends on their dynamic, doesn't it? But you'd like to hope they had a nice relationship.
Yeah. It seems, you get some kids that are like amazing actors and very believable, but this was quite a natural. I do wonder whether it must have been pleasant for them both to sort of act opposite each other, because it did come across as quite natural and believable. You could believe that Toby was a real person.
I think his acting was pretty good for a kid who'd not done anything before. I mean, compare him to Wrong Shaped Chips guy in Fawlty Towers. You know what I mean?
Wrong Shaped Chips guy, yes, absolutely. The meeting outside the house though is very uncomfortable, and Wendy is awful.
She's I hate her.
Considering what's gone before. And I know we only have John's side of it. We haven't got Wendy's side of it, have we, really, at this point? But she's, like, passive-aggressive and rude and horrible. And for someone that cheated on her husband and had him thrown out of the house, she aggravated me. So that's why I had to turn it off. Yeah. I had to switch it off at this point and go back to it on a different day, because I couldn't watch her.
Well, she sort of came across as having no shame. Do you know what I mean? Really unrepentant, horrible, posh, shrill piece of work. She was embarrassing John and undermining him in front of his son at every opportunity, wasn't she? She's just not nice. And we should probably say at this point that Wendy Allnut, who played Wendy, who I'm sure is a very nice lady and not like the Wendy that was married to John, she was a regular in Sorry with Ronnie Corbett.
Yes.
She was in that. I do remember her. She was Ronnie Corbett's love interest, wasn't she? Or ex or something. I can't remember.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Language, Timothy. That one.
She tells John not to take Toby to the zoo again, because apparently he's taken him to the zoo every week that he's had him so far. But then we find out that that's all that's open on a Sunday. We're talking about the mid-80s, where Sundays wasn't a day. That wasn't a day where everything was open and you had free reign to do whatever you wanted. It was still a day where things shut down, things weren't open. So he's trying to make the best of the time that he spends with his son and make it wholesome. Yeah. But Wendy says, no, don't take him to the zoo again. He's got enough stuffed animals and stuff. He doesn't need to go there again. Oh.
And then where does it cut to?
To the zoo. We're straight in the zoo. With a stuffed animal under his arm and a cap on his head. And Toby's talking about Mike, who is the guy who was John's best friend, who ran off with Wendy. Well, didn't really run off. He just shut the front door, really, didn't he, on John?
Evicted him, yeah.
there was no running. But Toby calls him Uncle Mike now, which is it just doesn't sit right.
But it's quite sweet, this scene, because Toby is making John feel inferior to Uncle Mike in that innocent, tactless way that kids do.
Yes.
But John's saying, "You like Uncle Mike, don't you?" And he says, "Yeah." And he says, "Well, that's good. I'm glad you're happy."
Yeah.
Shows what a nice guy he is, you know.
Absolutely. He wants his son to be happy, and he's glad that he likes the guy that lives with his mum now.
Yeah.
Mike, it's hinted at really around here about what Mike is like, and Toby tells John that Mike says that he's going to take him and his mum to Disneyland, which is that's a usual spun line, I think, to sort of get the kid on board.
Yeah.
I'll take you to Disneyland. But then we find out that John thinks that Mike's tight with his money, so a trip to Disneyland's going to be really unlikely.
That's reminded me of when we moved to Shropshire from the northwest.
Yeah.
And my mum said, "You can have a treehouse because we're living in the country," and then we just moved to like a market town, like a suburban, just normal sized plot. You could never have built a treehouse. The promises that you make to your kids, eh? Lion, cow, fucking treehouse. I also just could call your attention to the fact that when they cut to the zoo,
yes,
they showed all these other dads with their kids. Did you notice? So it was like a joke that basically this is the only place where all these Sunday dads have got to go with their kids. It's keeping the zoo in business. Yeah.
Before McDonald's became a thing, it was London Zoo.
Yeah. Before bowling alleys made their way over here from America and things like that.
Yeah. Toby asks John why he doesn't love Mummy anymore. And initially John says, "You said that you wouldn't mention that again." To which Toby replies, "Well, you said you wouldn't take me to the zoo again." So, touche. John tries to explain how the relationship works now, because it must be really confusing for a kid to try and get their head around all this. And he distracts him with hamburgers and ice cream, which always works with kids.
Mm-hmm.
We're then back at home, and we see John dropping Toby back off at Wendy's house, and Toby's been sick on the bus because of the hamburgers and ice cream that it's taken to make him stop asking questions, I think.
Yeah.
He tries to tell Wendy that Toby's only had a salad and some wholemeal bread, so he thinks he's got a sickness bug, not a belly full of ice cream and burgers.
Another example of his little fibs that he tells.
Yeah.
They're not white lies, but they're... I mean, you know, if you were dealing with a harridan like that constantly on your back...
it's just to get yourself out of shit.
Yeah, exactly.
It's to get yourself out of shit lies. John reveals here that he's had to catch 3 buses to get to the zoo. So not only has he taken his kids somewhere that's the only place that's open in all of London by all accounts, but he's had to catch 3 buses on a Sunday. Ugh.
In London. Ugh. Sorry, any Londoners listening.
But I think that says a lot about John. John's sort of commitment to doing something wholesome with his kid.
Yeah, even if it is boring him silly.
Yeah. Wendy here she's angry, she's ungrateful, and very dismissive of John, I thought. She tells him off for bringing home more hats and stuffed toys, and for taking him to the zoo yet again.
Mm-hmm. And she's witless as well. She says, "Would you like some salt and vinegar for it? That chip on your shoulder."
Really stupid joke. Yeah. Rubbish joke.
Pipe down, you silly harpy.
And then she sort of goes a complete 180 and then suggests that they try and be friends. And John asks where Mike is. Mike's apparently down at the club that he's a member of, having a lunchtime drink. It's now early evening. I think she says that it's like 7:15 or something. And Wendy tries to make excuses for him. So we can already see sort of cracks in the Mike and Wendy love nest dynamic. She offers John a drink and says, "Go on, you can help yourself. You know where the cocktail cabinet is." And John does that muttery thing and he says, "Yeah, of course I do. I bought the bloody thing."
Yeah.
So it must be really uncomfortable being in that house, knowing that you've paid for everything and that these were your things. These were your things that you had in your life, and now you've got no right to any of this. Just feels really sad.
Yeah. God, we're going to start sounding like Fathers for Justice in a minute.
I know.
You got your superhero costume. We're going to scale a building.
Yeah, I'm going to go and climb up Bolton Town Hall.
Any sexual problems?
They argue over the whiskey in the cabinet, and John assumes he's that he's paying for because he knows that Mike is quite tight. And then he and Wendy end up reminiscing a little, and Wendy suggests that the marriage broke up because John was a teacher and was more focused on his job. And his evenings were spent marking books. But John just insists that he just wanted to give his family a good life. He just wanted the best for everyone. And you can see both sides of that. I can see both sides of that.
Yeah, I guess definitely. So. But I mean, how would Wendy cope with being married to a modern day teacher? You know, the amount of bloody work they have to do. Jeez.
Yeah. Any role you could put into that argument, couldn't you? And think, well, you know, it's not. Doesn't mean you can go and cheat on him.
Yeah, exactly. He was providing. They're sort of lurching on a loop between squabbling and flirting, aren't they? They
are. Yeah. We then see them having dinner together. John stops for dinner, and apparently they're playing footsie under the table. And Wendy thinks that it's because she's had too much to drink, and John pours her another one. And Wendy reminds him that too much drink makes her feel sexy. She's like, oh, I know. She goes over to the settee and sort of like lays herself down, looking quite seductive.
Well,
and then John makes a pass at her, and they kiss. And then this is where it goes a little bit weird, because Wendy asks him to be rough with her.
Yeah.
Which John is reluctant to do, as he could never get the hang of it. And then he does this really weird thing where he ends up thrashing her about and like wagging her all over the settee.
Tossing her around like a rag doll, isn't he?
Yeah. And now, #different times, Wendy now says, treat me like a naughty schoolgirl, which is weird because he's a teacher.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's
it
true.
made me feel a bit uncomfortable, that. But John still doesn't really get the hang of it and says, I need you to write me 50 lines before the morning. That'll do it.
That reminds me of that old joke where it's like, moan for me. Well, the cupboards could do with a clean.
They hear Mike coming in now. Oh dear. And they jump up, obviously not wanting to be caught on the settee together. And John greets Mike. John's quite...
Well,
I think he's the bigger man in this.
Well, he is a bigger man. He's got a bigger... He's
scene.
covering his erection, so he is definitely a bigger man.
He is with his cardi. Pulls his cardi down.
Yeah, he's covering his hard on with his Roy Cropper cardi.
John!
Mike!
So, how you been doing?
Oh, I've been doing all right, Mike. Wendy and I have been discussing maintenance money.
I thought you was looking a bit flushed.
I thought you were going to Brian's house.
Well, I changed my mind. Haven't any objections, have you? After all, this is my house.
Is Mike supposed to be Welsh?
Yeah, he brings his diabolical Welsh accent. It's really awful.
Why do that? Just because just make him move from somewhere else where the actor can actually do the accent.
Yeah, weird. Why write it in? Yeah.
That's only a change of literally a crossing out of a word. That's all it takes.
It's not really important to his identity within the plot, is it? His Welshness.
No.
Yeah.
So it turns out that Wendy was trying to make Mike jealous on the phone because she told Mike that John was there, and as soon as John leaves, I'm going to lock the door, which has made Mike come scuttling back.
Yeah.
So Wendy's plan works. She is very devious.
But she just admits it right in front of John. Like I said earlier, she got no shame whatsoever.
It didn't have anything to do with the fact I told you John was here, did it?
Oh, Wendy, so that's what you're trying to do? Make me jealous?
Yes. And it worked, didn't it?
Yeah.
I'll see if there's anything to eat.
Good girl. I'm famished.
She used me to make you jealous.
That's just her way.
But Mike seems really confused that it still rankles with John that he stole his life, as if he should get over it.
Absolutely. This scene, sort of this bit of the scene got my back up a little bit, because John reminds Mike how when he moved down to London, it was John that had sort of taken him under his wing and looked after him and made sure that everything was okay for him, invited him into his home, and how did he repay him? By taking his wife and his home. And Mike's argument is that, they need to abide by the ruling of the judge.
Yeah, isn't it? Lovely.
This is what the judge has said is supposed to happen. You need to abide by this, or it's just anarchy. Oh my God.
Look you, with his dodgy Welsh accent.
So John leaves in a bit of a huff.
He just takes a Glenfiddich with him, though, on the way out, doesn't he? I like that. He just grabs it.
Not that, did he? Good.
I think what you're trying trying to say, Rafe, is that we are a symposium idea and formulae seeking greater emotional awareness within the framework of viable spatial patterns by means of a sympathetic dialogue based on interactive cooperation and mutual trust, yeah?
We now cut to the party, the party at Mrs. Boyd Peters' house.
Yeah.
Kirk's dancing away with a Wednesday night person who we find out is Sylvia.
He's got his arse all over her. No, he's not got his arse. He's got his hands all over her arse.
He's got his arse all over her hands.
Yeah, that's a defence in court, isn't it?
Sylvia's more concerned with whether John's coming or not, though, as well.
Yeah.
She's not really bothered about dancing with Kirk. That's quite interesting.
He's definitely into him, isn't she?
She is. Kate and Ralph are talking away as well in the corner, and they're discussing still what they think Mrs. Boyd Peters' problem might be. And when John arrives soon afterwards, he joins in as well with the chatter.
Yeah, they're all... Well, Kirk's busy throwing nuts at Mrs. Arnott's head.
Yeah, he said he's invented a new game. It's called Flicking Cashew Nuts at Mrs. Arnott's head. Oh,
Yeah,
poor Mrs. Arnott.
yeah.
Bet she gets home and takes her hat off and there's like a massive big collection of nuts in her hat. Bless her. Kate, of course, thinks this is really stupid. And then there's a massive fart noise.
Big comedy fart.
Comedy fart. Louise's face made me howl at this stage because she looks over at the group
Like a knowing look, isn't it? Yeah.
to say, this is what I was talking about. And here we have another example of how John is quite a gentleman because he sort of steps forward in the room and says, oh, I'm really sorry about that. And he apologises to take the heat off Mrs. Boyd Peters.
Overly dramatic,
Very
though,
sweet.
somewhat, wasn't it? Overly dramatic apology to step forward and address the whole room, you know?
He did. He did address the room.
Yeah.
And when it happens again, Ralph does the same, which I think, again, it just highlights the fact that Ralph is a good egg.
He's a good man too, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah.
And Mrs. Arnott's checking a rape alarm.
She
She
is.
thinks that's...
Like, what kind of noise is his rape alarm making if she needs to check that it's not going off? It just farted.
I do like at this point, though, when Sylvia comes up and starts conversing with John, sort of awkwardly, because she's another awkward divorcee.
Yes.
And she starts saying, oh, it's terrible about Mrs. Dooms Patterson, Mrs. Boyd Patterson? What, Boyd Peters?
Boyd Peters!
Sorry. It's terrible about her arse situation. And they weren't the words
Yes.
used.
No,
I'm
she
really
did
not.
say
They're not painting a very accurate picture here, but she's saying it's terrible, and that people make jokes of her. And there was one guy said, "I'll name that tune in one."
We were at this fete at the vicarage last month, and Mrs. Boyd Peters was having a particularly bad day. Some of the cruel comments that were shouted out. I'll name that tune in one. Things like that.
No. Really?
You don't expect that sort of thing from a man of the cloth, do you?
There was quite a few sort of machine gun jokes towards the end of this episode, I thought, that landed really, really well, and that was one of them.
Well,
that made me laugh.
That is a classic example of the John Sullivan 1-2 joke, I think. You know, like punchline,
Yes.
and then there's a second punchline. Sometimes he even
There's
does
a second
it.
punchline. Yeah.
The second or third punchline might not actually be as funny as the first, but come in while you're still laughing.
Yeah.
Come in such rapid succession, like that. You know, it's a bit like Frank Carson used to say, "There's more."
Yeah.
Actually, that's not Frank Carson, is it? It's Jimmy Cricket. Oh, there's more. There's more.
It is Jimmy Cricket, yeah.
Sorry, I'm getting them mixed
It
up.
is.
They're both Irish. Apologies.
Sylvia then invites John over at the weekend. John thinks that there's going to be like loads of people there, but then she sort of hints that it's actually just a date, really, round at her
Yeah.
house. And she gives him a phone number on a little scrap of paper. He tries to get out of it and starts to sort of try and make excuses. And Kate overhears this and helps John out by saying that she needs to go home because she's got a headache. So then John is busying himself about getting Kate home and just tries to fob off Sylvia a little bit.
Yeah.
Before they do leave, though, the fart noise happens again.
It's a double parper, isn't it?
It is. And Kirk steps up, shouting, "That's all right, Mrs. Boyd Peters. You can have that one on me," which was one of the funniest lines in the whole episode. I thought it was brilliant.
That's all right, Mrs. Boyd-Peters. You have that one on me.
Also, the way Peter Blake did it, he did a magnanimous wave as he did it.
He did.
You know, as if
He
I'm
did.
such a gentleman. It was great.
He really does get mixed up, doesn't he?
Yeah.
John's in the foyer then, and we see him ripping up poor Sylvia's phone number. He doesn't want to go. He rips up the phone number, and Kate comes out into the foyer and asks him, "Are you okay? Is everything all right?" And John says, I'm just annoyed at how thoughtless people can be. But then Sylvia follows him out into the foyer and asks if she can have the piece of paper so she can write on her work number in case he needs that to make plans for the weekend. And obviously, at this stage, he's ripped it up and it's uncomfortable. But that is where the episode ends.
Seems we've sung love's last song, dear John.
I'm glad it ended at that point, because otherwise you have the uncomfortable scene of John saying, "Oh, I seem to have lost your..."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then Sylvia thinking, has he lost it? The type of thing that if Gervais was doing it, he would have included it for the cringe.
Of course it would, yeah. Is that a more modern trope, do you think? Is that a more modern thing of seeing the uncomfortableness?
Yeah, definitely.
We didn't, in the 80s, 90s, it wasn't a thing. You were excused from that bit of the character, I think.
Discomfort comedy, yeah.
Yeah, Ricky Gervais is like, he's all about that bit. That's the focus, isn't it? The watching the squirming and watching the excuses and discomfort. I'm glad that I didn't want to see that. I didn't want to see John being uncomfortable.
No, I didn't. Actually, on the subject of Ricky Gervais, I did. I mentioned that I did a post the other week, just sort of saying, I don't think Afterlife is particularly. I think it's rather overrated, particularly this last series, which I thought is an unpopular opinion. It's not going to, people will shout me down. A lot of people agreed with it. Actually, there's a couple of people, who replied though saying, "You deserve any abuse you get. It's a masterpiece," and another one just saying, "Oh, I think you're wrong. It's a great show." And it's just discussion. And then this week, Ricky Gervais has liked those two tweets in reply to.
Is that right?
To our tweet. So Ricky Gervais is at home scouring Twitter for mentions of his show to find reviews and like the positive ones, which I kind of find reassuring, because someone who's like seen as the pinnacle. I mean, not for me, but. Everyone thinks he's the pinnacle. He's still insecure enough about his work. I mean, he comes out with a lot of bravado where he seems to be very arrogant, but he's insecure enough to go out searching praise on Twitter.
Yeah. If you weren't bothered, you wouldn't look, would you?
No. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about in this? I did pick up on one thing.
Go on.
At Wendy's house, right in front of the fireplace, did you notice what was there?
Was it pampas grass?
It was indeed pampas grass. Yeah. Of course it was. We're out the 70s, we're into the 80s, but the swinging is still going on.
Spills over.
Yep.
Spills over into a new decade.
Did you pick up any bric-a-brac from Wendy's house? I think I got one.
It wasn't from Wendy's house. It was at the zoo. It was Toby's see-through green visor.
Oh yeah, I had one of them.
I remember having those from like a day out.
They were shit, weren't they?
They always ended up... they weren't very long-lasting because they cracked, because they were just so flimsy, but it was something that was a definite 80s piece of attire on a day out.
I don't think the UV rating was very high on this.
I don't think it was. No, it didn't work as any kind of... Its visor capabilities were very low.
The one thing that I just spotted as bric-a-brac was in Wendy's house was the floral pattern on her couch. Kind of very sickly colour, sickeningly kind of... floral and swirly and loud and of its time. Do you know what I mean? Chintzy.
Laura Ashley style print. That was definitely of the 80s, and I think it spilled over into the 90s, that kind of look as well. Because my sister's first wedding, her bridesmaid dresses were very similar to that settee.
Oh, horrible. Yeah. I noticed you trying to take back the word then. It was halfway out.
I'm trying to be diplomatic, but yeah.
Does she listen to the podcast now?
I don't know. This might be the last one that she listens to. Very sort of, not loud. I wouldn't say they were like loud and bold, but just very, very flowery. Just flowers everywhere.
No, I'm not a fan.
Of a time.
Also, actually, Mrs. Dooms Patterson. What's her name? Mrs.
Boyd-Peters.
Yeah, at her house. I noticed on the wall they had those little silhouette drawings, where people have snipped out a drawing of black paper so it looks like a silhouette in a frame.
Yes.
They were very in vogue in the 80s, weren't they? You know, a street artist might do it of your kids and just do a silhouette of their head.
A silhouette picture, yeah.
Yep.
Yes, they were.
They were something my mum had a crack at, I think, as well as those, those wooden plaques that you get like a big sort of Bernie pen and try and draw.
Oh, yeah.
She did them and sold them for a bit in the 80s.
They're quite a big thing again now, though, making Bernie pictures with a pen.
I'm sure there's a proper, more...
I don't think it's called that, no.
Bernie pen
but
pictures.
I think it's quite a big thing.
Yeah, it's interesting.
People with, like with side hustles.
Yeah.
Doing Bernie pen pictures.
Yeah, I like spotting those just little things that give you those personal memories. That's what I like about the bric-a-brac corner thing. Bric-a-brac spotlight, is that what we call it? I don't know.
Yeah. They make up a general memory picture, don't they, of things that you can recognise, especially from like your own home or from somebody else's home, and you can straight away. It's like a beacon for. Oh God, yeah, I remember that.
On the subject of which, shall we do fashion now?
Yes.
Okay, let's have a trip to Fashion Corner.
Whatever happened to those clothes we wore? It seems we never wear those clothes no more. Fashion Corner.
At the start of this episode, Kate is fully decked out in green, and she's got like a long sleeve top with a waistcoat over the top. I got Jolly Green Giant vibes from it, to be honest. I don't think that's what she was going for, but it was just a very plain green waistcoat over a green top and green jeans.
I've never heard someone say green so many times and such.
God, no, it was very green. It really was.
I have a clip of you from the first series, and I don't know why I saved it, but I had a little tiny clip of you going, very green. I don't know if you were talking about the green door that Margot went through or some fashion, but I saved it because the way you said it was really funny. I'll drop it in at the end of this episode.
I think we need to drop it. I need to hear that again.
Very green.
Very green. In this same scene, Louise is in a black top and multicoloured floral jacket. We've talked about these jackets before being very sort of... They were big in the 80s. And they've got, like Miami Vice jackets, where the sleeves are like 3/4 lengths. With like a small collar. But this is something that over the past, there's like an aesthetic now where, like an 80s and 90s aesthetic that kids, like teenagers, are adapting the fashion of the 90s especially, and bringing it into having like a modern day version of it. So I can see these jackets have like made their way back into like mum wear, I would say. Not really kids wear, but mum wear. So if you're going out, like, to the pub for some lunch, you put on your jeans and a top and one of these jackets just to smarten up what you've got on.
Okay.
It's not something I would wear, but it's something that the general populace.
Yeah, you pointed that out about Louise's jacket the other week, I think. Same sort of thing.
She wears quite a lot of stuff that it's not just memorable, it's something that I see now. It's something that's still there now. Mrs. Arnott. She's in all the greens as well.
Very green.
Very green. She's got what I would describe as being an apple white hat, so like a green tinge, a sage cardigan, and a mint green silky blouse with a pussy bow, which we've talked about previously. It's not something that we've seen on Mrs. Arnott, I don't think.
No.
Prior to this episode, so she might be, like sort of seeing Louise and what she wears and being
inspired. Yeah.
Inspired, yes.
And of course, she was also wearing nuts.
Nuts in a hat.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's an interesting look.
It is, indeed. Kirk he's not got his usual white jacket on.
No, even I noticed
at the
it.
meeting.
It's like a t-shirt, isn't it? Very understated.
Oh, I thought he looked quite cool, actually. He had a t-shirt underneath. It looked like what could be like an 80s band t-shirt. I don't think it was, but that's how it felt.
George
it
Michael
gave me the vibes.
kind of vibes in Wham.
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
It did. He had a sort of 3/4 length sleeve jacket on as well in grey. Obviously not his usual white jacket, but his leather pants were still there.
But his medallion had gone. It was just simple chain this week.
So
he was very understated. I thought he looked all right this week.
He was. Wendy Wendy, when John goes around to take Toby home, she's got a floral cream blouse on, and that's got big red and green flowers on it. Like I said before, like the Laura Ashley look. She seems to have taken on board the Laura Ashley look in a big way in her house and in the way that she looks as well. John, in this same scene, he has a Aran knitted cardigan on with the big brown buttons. Did you have one of them when you were little?
This is the one he used to cover his erection.
Yes.
No, I don't think I did.
It's like really thick woolen cardigan with these massive green, wooden buttons.
Like you get on a duffel coat.
More round. They were round and like a checked, like woven look to them.
Right. I don't think I had one as a kid.
I only ever saw them on Aran cardigans, but really heavy. But not very flattering. Not something that if you were trying to woo your ex-wife back, I don't think you'd put an Aran cardigan on.
Mind you, I don't think he was expecting what happened to happen.
No, that's true. Maybe he was wrapped up for the warmth
of the zoo with all the other single men.
At the zoo. Yeah. Sylvia at the party near the end of the episode. She's dressed in like a black crossover dress with like a golden embroidered shoulder to it, which was, I think, something that like women of a certain age would end up dressed with, some kind of gold woven embroidered thing on their clothes. But she looked quite sweet, and she was obviously dressed for the occasion, for the party. Special mentions, I've got 2 special mentions. One for Toby's green visor.
Yep.
And Mike's red cardigan.
Yes.
It was like orange red, very, very bright.
Maybe it was indicative of his Welshness.
Maybe it was.
There was I actually got one of them as well, Al. There was the caretaker in his classic workman's / caretaker's coat. So there's the same sort of coat that you saw the guy I referred to earlier in the Windbreak War wearing. It was the workman's kind of coat, brown, going down to just above the knees. It's just what somebody who was doing some sort of, well, not manual labour, but
a caretaker in.
Yeah, a caretaker or delivery kind of guy. Yeah. They all wore it. More in the 70s, I would associate it. I can think of people cutting open all hours or even step-tones wearing that type of thing.
Yeah.
But he had it on. The odious little... What did Louise call him? Odious little pleb?
I was going to say prick then, but it wasn't prick, it was pleb.
Yeah.
Odious little prick.
Bit harsh.
Rude.
So, MVP, finally. Did you pick one this week, Al?
I think my MVP this week was John. I know that's a really sort of dull decision, but I just think for everything that was thrown at him in this episode, despite the fact that he didn't have the guts to tell Sylvia at the end that he just didn't want to have a date with her, I will forgive him that for all the stuff that he put up with his ex-wife.
And his good eggery that he was showing.
His good eggery and being a good dad.
Yeah. I'm sort of with you. You've almost convinced me. And to be honest, you're going to poo-poo this, but I'm going to give it to Kirk because of that line.
Oh, yeah?
That line's just one of his delivery of that line was superb.
Yeah.
Just on that alone.
And the intention was to be a good person. He was to be. It was entirely to do the right. He thought he was doing the right thing, despite the fact that he really didn't.
Yeah, it's just like when he bought the razor for Ralph a couple of episodes ago, or when he intended to bury the terrapin in a matchbox and then shook it about. He's trying.
His intentions are always good.
Yeah, he's trying. He's very trying.
Often.
Yeah. So good on him. He's getting this week for me, Kirk.
Excellent.
So if you're enjoying Deep Diving Dear John with us, you can follow us at SADDO Podcast on Twitter and Instagram, where we post rare photos and videos of Dear John, Fawlty Towers and The Good Life. We have a Facebook page as well that you can find by searching SADDO Podcast, and we also have a growing Facebook group that you can join and contribute to with discussion or memes or anything that you find yourself. Subscribe to our newsletter by visiting our website, which is saddo.club, and then there you can find and get information about us, read our blog, shout us a coffee, and listen to the episodes if you don't do podcast apps. You can also watch the original episodes that we discuss on our episode notes pages, or take our super tricky Good Life and Fawlty Towers quizzes. Get in touch with us
by email at saddopodcast@gmail.com. And if you can you subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts from. So next week's episode is episode 6. Do you know which one we're on next week?
Yeah, it's a penultimate episode of the first series, and it's called The 14-Year Itch.
All right, okay.
It features Ken from the school.
The other teacher?
Yeah, John's friend, who's not particularly likeable. And
yeah,
I think he is frustrated in his marriage and decides to come along to the one-to-one club thinking it's some sort of haven of debauchery.
Oh dear, he's going to be sadly disappointed.
Yeah, but his wife's in this one, and you know who plays his wife, don't you?
Who plays his wife?
Marlene!
Excellent. Oh, I look forward to that.
So on that note, I'll see thee.
I'll see thee.
Dear John, by the time you read these lines, I'll be gone. Life goes on, right or wrong. Now it's all been said and done, dear John. Seems we've sung love's last song, dear John.
Very green.